And over the past several days following the death of George Floyd, there has been outrage in Minneapolis and across the nation, including Los Angeles. And joining us now is Dr. Tommy Tucson. He is a law enforcement consultant and retired police chief, as well as a criminal justice professor at Bakersfield College. He's here to kind of talk about the situation, explain his work on the transformational policing model. Good morning, Dr. Tucson, and thanks so much for joining us. Let's first talk a little bit about what we're seeing and what we saw overnight. What we saw overnight in Minneapolis, I have to say, is very similar to what I remember 5 years ago in Baltimore after the arrest of Freddie Gray. And we're seeing a lot of protests out there. Now, we've heard from reporters on the ground say that a majority of the protests are peaceful, but still, there's looting going on, there's a lot of tension, and there's a lot of unrest in the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we're seeing that kind of play out across the nation as well. What are your thoughts, and what does this tell us as what we're seeing in Minneapolis? What does this look like from your perspective?
Well, the most important thing is to make sure everybody is safe, and condolences to the family of George Floyd. And we need to keep calm. This is a country of laws. This is a country of structure. We need to make sure, and the First Amendment allows the protest. It allows us to express ourselves, but not to use that to justify criminal activity. And looting is criminal. It's against the law to steal. And those basic protests are fine within the law, but not looting, not stealing. And it's sad. I remember Watts riot as a young child. I remember Rodney King. I remember Freddie Gray and Michael Brown. It is sad to see that this is returning, especially in the crisis of the pandemic.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about the transformational policing model that you're really putting out there, and this is something that you've talked about before, but you've also gone around the state talking to other police departments and communities about this idea of transformational policing. Can you explain a little bit about what that means and how you've talked to even our local law enforcement about it?
What I want to do is briefly go over it and avoid a lot of terminology that may appear academic. Bakersfield College is going to launch a campaign against the violence through transformational policing. And what it does is it forges positive police community partnerships. Bakersfield PD is well ahead of this curve through their principal policing. And in transformational policing, there are two approaches. The first approach is collaborative community coaching, whereby the police officers are taught implicit bias, constitutional policing, and procedural justice. I go through a course with this. Then the community members, community criminal justice education is a same type of approach where we talk about the rules, the responsibilities, and the purpose of the criminal justice system in America. The neat thing about this, everybody's together. As I go from agency and community to community talking about transformational policing, I always do it with joint community and law enforcement in the room. And I got to tell you, it's very interesting to see the reaction from community members who have witnessed shootings, who have witnessed, what they feel is police brutality. But I also have law enforcement in the room, and the law enforcement and the community members are able to exchange ideas, and law enforcement sees, wow, I see why I'm distrusted. It's not me personally, it's the system that I represent. And then the community members see that, hey, law enforcement cares, they're trying. We need to allow our system to work.
Now, I've got to ask you, because, again, there's a lot of tension out there, and we're running low on time here, but I got to ask you really quick, what can we as a community do? When we as a community see what's going on in Minneapolis, when we are outraged of what we see in Minneapolis, when there's a lot of tension, what can we do as a community moving forward?
We must come together. We must really share and interact positively with one another. The partnerships that I talk about between police and community must come to fruition, and we must understand that's the only way to proceed. This is the greatest country in the history of mankind. We need to show that. Yes, there's some issues. I understand that from my time in policing. I also understand that as a young boy from South Central Los Angeles. And I think it's key that protest is fine, but communicate, interact positively with law enforcement and all of our community, because nobody wants, especially during these hard times of the pandemic, injury, hurt, harm to come to the less fortunate. We have an underrepresented population in Bakersfield. We need to protect them, but they need to protect themselves by understanding the rules of justice in the American society. And law enforcement is understanding more and more the importance of trust.
All right, Dr. Tommy Tucson, thanks so much for joining us and kind of giving us a little bit of perspective on the situation. Take care of yourself.
Thank
All right,
you.
your time now.